Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys the worst books I have ever read according to Goodreads. So a couple weeks ago I did a video where I talked about the best books that I've ever read according to Goodreads. I will link that video up in the cards above. I actually got the idea to do that video from Riley Marie, and so I thought that I would do the flip side of that and talk about the worst books that I've ever read according to Goodreads. So basically the idea behind this is you go on your Goodreads, you sort all of the books that you've ever read by average rating, and then for this video specifically I'm gonna go from the books with the lowest average rating. I'm going to talk about the 15 books that have the worst average rating. So I'm gonna work my way backwards from number 15 to number 1, which is the worst book I've ever read according to Goodreads. This should be a really fun time. There are a few surprises on this list, but also quite a few of these books I understand why people don't like them. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. With number 15, we have Never Kiss a Duke by Megan Frampton. This has an average rating of 3.5 exactly. So this is the first and only book that I have read by Megan Frampton, and to be quite honest, after reading this, I don't plan on reading anything else by her. So this is technically book 1 in her series that centers around dukes. I can't remember the title of the series. I was turned on to this author because I had heard that she has kind of similar vibes to Tessa Dare. So I will say at like the beginning of this book, like probably the first 20% or so, I was getting slight Tessa Dare vibes, slight like rom-com-y vibes as well. But as the book went along, it just was fine. It was just very meh. Everything about this was meh. The romance, the steamy scenes, the plot, like everything was just fine. And what I've noticed is I've tried looking up Megan Frampton books that have relatively high ratings, and like all of her books have pretty low ratings. So it seems like I'm not the only one that is not blown away by her books. Like I said, I don't plan on reading anything more by her, but if you guys do have recommendations for like that one amazing book by this author, definitely let me know. Like, I mean, I'm not completely opposed to reading a book that you think is really great. So number 14 on this list, we have Allured Apart by Jane Ashford. This has an average rating of 3.46. So I read this back in like 2018, 2019 when I first got my NetGalley account, and I was just accepting and reading any arcs that publishers would give to me. And so this was definitely one of those. This, I just remember being a very, very, very middle of the road historical romance. I think at the time I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't even feel like looking up the plot for you guys to explain what it's about, because yeah, I just remember this being pretty meh. I can understand why other people felt the same way about this one. Yeah, no surprise. Next up we have another historical romance for number 13. This is The Duke Effect by Sophie Jordan. This has an average rating of 3.45. This is another book that I'm not shocked made it on this list. So this is like book 7 in her Rogue Files series, and the last 3 books of this series center around these 3 sisters. And book 5, which was like The Duke's Stolen Bride, I really enjoyed. I also really enjoyed The Virgin and the Rogue, which is book 6. And then this book is about, I believe her name is Nora, and she's the youngest of these 3 sisters, and I just like loved her character because she's just so quirky, so funny. And she's kind of a scientist, and the plot sounded really cool because it was basically about how she's writing letters back and forth with this man, and she's pretending to be her father so that this man will take her seriously as a scientist. And so this man ends up just showing up at their house, and he's looking for the doctor that he's been writing letters to. And so Nora's like, oh shit, that's me. I definitely went into this with some pretty high expectations because, like I said, I really enjoyed Nora's character in those previous books, and then I loved the setup of the plot, but the romance was so lackluster, and I really the only thing I remember is that at the end when they confessed their love to each other, I just didn't believe it at all. So oops. Like, I totally see why this has an average rating that low. Like, it really is not a great book from Sophie Jordan, and I feel like Sophie Jordan is a very hit or miss author in general. Some of her books, a lot of people enjoy them, like myself. And then some of them, a lot of us really don't like them. And I've noticed that her most recent series in particular has been not great. So just wanted to throw that out there. Next up, we have The King of Bourbon Street by Thea DeSalle. This is book 1 in an erotic romance series that is based in New Orleans. So I was very excited going into this book because Chelsea from Chelsea Darling Reads, she doesn't really post on YouTube anymore, but I'll link her channel below anyway. She raves and raves about this book, and she says that it's like her favorite erotic romance ever. So I definitely went into this with some pretty high expectations. This also features a plus size heroine. By the way, this has an average rating of 3.45 as well. This book had so many issues for me. I ended up DNFing it at around like the 40% mark, something like that. For one thing, for a series that's based in New Orleans, why you would call a streetcar the trolley, I don't understand. Like, sorry if that's a very nitpicky thing, but I'm from New Orleans, so like, we all call it the streetcar. It's not a trolley. Like, what? Also, I did not like the hero really at all. Like, the way that he would think about Rain, the heroine, like, it was just very like icky and yikes to me, the way that he would refer to her body. Like, it just wasn't, it wasn't great. Like, he made up these really weird like nicknames for her in his head. It was just like really weird. This is also based very much in BDSM, and I felt like the hero was just kind of winging it as a dom, which I feel like is very dangerous. And it's just very much based around their physical relationship. I wasn't feeling much chemistry between these two, so I got bored very quickly. So that's really the main reason why I DNF'd this. But yeah, like, this book is not great, and I'm honestly really glad that it made it on this list, because I'm glad that I'm not the only one that hated this book. This is also one of the very few books that I have DNF'd that I gave 1 star. Usually when I DNF something, I don't give it a rating at all, just because for me personally, I don't think it's fair to rate something that I didn't finish. But like, clearly I hated this book so much that I gave it 1 star. So yeah, there's that. Next up, for number 11, we have Side Effects May Vary by Julie Murphy. This has an average rating of 3.43 stars. This is a YA novel about our main character who, before the book starts, she had cancer. She's now in remission, and now she's like hell-bent on getting revenge against the people that bullied her when she was younger. And this main character is so unlikable. Like, I hated her. The way that she treated all the people around her, not just the people she was getting revenge against, but like also her best friend, who I believe was also her love interest. I feel like she treated him like shit. Like, she was just not a likable main character at all. So I'm also glad that this book made it on this list, because I know that I'm not the only one that hated this main character. Yeah, I finished this book, but I gave it 2 stars. Like, it's really not a great book. Next up, for number 10, this is My Coach, My Stalker by Jessica Kane. This has an average rating of 3.41 stars. And honestly, I think it should have a lower average rating than that. So this is only one of 2 novellas that I've read by Jessica Kane that I DNF'd. I DNF'd this, I believe, at right about the 50% mark. This is such an icky, gross romance. Oh my God. So this centers around this man who has been coaching our heroine. She is an Olympic diver. He's been coaching her for the last 2 years. So they started training when she was 16 and now she's 18, competing in the Olympics. And he's always been sexually attracted to her. And so, like the title would suggest, he starts stalking her around like the Olympic Village, and she's just trying to like have a good time while she's there. She's feeling very stressed and feeling a lot of pressure because she's at the Olympics, obviously. And so he's just stalking her, which I have no problem with stalking romances. But then, ooh, the way their sexual relationship starts, it's very, very yikes. And at one point, he straight up goes to the heroine's father and convinces her father that it would be in her best interest to have sex with him. And the father completely agrees with this. And I'm someone that I have no problem suspending my disbelief when it comes to Jessica Kane novellas. Her novellas are bonkers. Like, that is one thing you need to know. But that, I was like, what? And then they start having sex for the first time, and all of a sudden she starts acting like a literal child while they're having sex, and they're both really into it. And I felt disgusting reading this novella. So I had to immediately put it down. I immediately removed my download from Kindle Unlimited. Oh my God, this was so gross. So yikes. Like, age play is one thing. I'm not gonna kink shame anybody, but this was on another level in my opinion. And of course, like with a lot of Jessica K novellas, there was a lot of daddy kink, and I have no problem with that. But like, I'm sorry, when you start acting like a literal child, no, absolutely not. So I am not surprised that it made it on this list, though I think that it deserves a lower average rating than a 3.41, but I'm gonna leave the discussion at that. I do not recommend this novella at all. This is one of the very, very few Jessica K novellas that I would tell you to stay away from. So, number 9, we have The Dare by Harley LaRue. This also has an average rating of 3.41. This one, I'm not surprised is on this list, but I love this novella with my whole heart. This is a very dark and taboo erotic novella. It's basically the prequel to a full-length novel, though. The full-length novel is set to come out on, I believe, September 30th of this year, and that is going to be a poly/reverse harem romance. I'm very excited for the full novel to come out, but this one, I understand why it has such low ratings, because there's a lot of kinks in here that I feel like a lot of people don't enjoy. Though I will say Harley LaRue is very clear about all of the content warnings in this novella. Like, the first page of this novella is full of all the content warnings. Like, she doesn't surprise you with anything. So part of me is kind of surprised that people still read the novella, even though they see all the content warnings, and they may see some kinks that they might not enjoy, but that's neither here nor there. But for one thing, there's a lot of like humiliation kink going on. Basically this novella centers around our main character. She used to bully the hero and his best friends, who were known as the losers, when they were in high school. And so now it's a few years later, they're all like in college. They all go to this Halloween party with like all the people they went to high school with. So the hero and heroine end up playing beer pong. She loses, and so she has to be his sex slave basically for the rest of the night. This was everything that I could want from a dark erotic novella. I just remember being so enthralled and mesmerized by the writing and the story and these morally gray characters, and the sex scenes were on point. Like, you guys have no idea how excited I am for the full-length novel. I believe it's just called Losers. And like I said, it's gonna be like a poly/reverse harem type romance between the heroine, the hero, and his friends that showed up in the novella dressed as clowns, I might add. I feel like that actually might be the main reason why people hate this novella, is because there's characters dressed as clowns. Though what I will say, because I hate clowns too, believe me, I understand, I vividly remember, at least it wasn't that the guys were wearing like creepy clown masks, they were wearing like clown makeup, which I feel like is slightly more forgivable. But I also understand hating clowns, so there's that. Next up for number 8, I'm actually really sad that this has such a low average rating. This is Worship by Jack Harbin. It has an average rating of 3.4 exactly. I don't really get why this has such a low rating. I gave it 4 stars. Like, this is a very solid, steamy, friends to lovers romance novella. I don't really understand what issues people would have with this novella. I mean, I can understand why a lot of people would give this maybe 3 stars, because like, I think I gave it like 4 stars, leaning on 3.5 stars, just because I think I remember the pacing kind of being slow towards the end. But the way this novella starts is pretty fantastic in my opinion. We have our hero, who has been pining for the heroine for years. They reunite again at their like 10-year high school reunion. She gets into some kind of altercation with another girl there, and so she ends up being just like covered in like food and drink or something, and so he helps her out, and they break into the gym showers, and steamy things start happening in the shower. And so that's like the start of their romance. Yeah, I just tried looking it up on Goodreads to see if anybody had like real issues with it. And I just think that a lot of people gave it 3 stars, which I can kind of understand. But I still think that it was a really good novella and I would recommend it because we love a sweet and shy, nerdy yet sexy hero. And he's also the type of hero that while he might seem shy, he turns quite dominant in the bedroom. So wanted to throw that out there. So for number 7, we have another Jack Harbin book. Actually, these 3 books are all by Jack Harbin. So for number 7, we have His Beauty, which has an average rating of 3.38. This is a fantasy romance retelling of Beauty and the Beast. I think people hate this book because the Beast stays a beast the whole time. So even during the sex scenes, he is a beast. But he's not an animal. Like, he very much is just like a beast-like man. So I don't know, something tells me that a lot of people went into this because it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, not because they read and are used to monster romances. So I really think that's why this has such a low average rating. I personally really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Like, I thought the Belle in this novella was particularly badass and I just really liked their romance. And yes, he stays a beast the whole time, but like, monster romances exist. Like, that is a subgenre in romance. And yeah, I don't know, I thought this one was pretty well done. So number 6 is yet another Jack Harbin book. This is The Good Girl. This has an average rating of 3.33. This one I can understand why people don't like this one because I DNF'd it at 40%. This one is straight up smut. It's erotica. It is not a romance novella. I mean, I didn't finish it, so I don't really know if there's an HEA, but anyways, the main character, basically, she is desperate for money, and so she auctions herself to make money. I just remember being pretty bored by the sex scenes, and so that's why I DNF'd this. But yeah, it's pure smut. If you're not into that, of course you're not gonna like this. And maybe people that read this have read other Jack Harbin books, and so maybe they expected more of romance. By the way, now that I'm thinking about it, this is definitely written under a pen name, but it is Jack Harbin. It's just, I can't remember the pen name. It's on the cover, I can't remember, but yeah. So I have a feeling people went into this maybe expecting more of a romance, and it's really more erotica than anything else. So for number 5, we have The Paper Wasp by Lauren Acampora. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the last name, but this has an average rating of 3.32. I'm actually gonna read you guys an excerpt from my Goodreads review because this is just a very weird and bizarre book. The only reason why I read this in the first place was because this was yet another book that when I first got my NetGalley account, I was just accepting any ARCs that publishers would give me. And so this was one of them. I went into this expecting more of a mystery thriller, and I think at the end of the day, this is more of like literary fiction. But let me talk a little bit about what this book is about because it's just very bizarre. So it centers around Abby, who's like very obsessed with a childhood friend of hers named Elise, who is like a Hollywood starlet. And so Abby ends up just moving to LA to live with Elise and become her assistant. And so yeah, my main thing was I thought this was going to be a thriller where like Abby would like just go crazy and like do whatever she could to like take over Elise's life. But instead this story went into several odd directions that I wasn't expecting, and I feel like there was almost a bit of magical realism at times. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a very, very odd plot. Like, I feel like the writing was fine, but it's just a very weird story with a very weird ending. So I feel like a lot of the people who read this book, like me, were just left feeling very confused. So I do not recommend this one by any means. Just very strange. Next for number 4, this also has an average rating of 3.32. This is The Getaway by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I read this because this is an Audible original audiobook. It's only like 2.5 hours. And you know, with Audible originals, these come free with your Audible membership. And I know that I enjoy this author duo's works. They wrote The Wife Between Us, Anonymous Girl, a couple other books as well. And I've given like all of their books for the most part 4 stars. So I went into this not expecting too much because it's a pretty short novella. I'm a little surprised that this is so far up on this list because I don't think this is like a horrible thriller. It's just not great. Basically it centers around our main character who gets lured into this like spa resort weekend, but it turns out the spa resort is, I think, a cult of some kind, or like somebody in her life lures her there to like try to kill her or something. So I don't recommend it, but I also don't think it's like the worst thriller I've ever read. Number 3, we have #Fashion Victim by Amina Akhtar. This has an average rating of 3.29. This basically centers around our main character, Anya, who I think she works at like a fashion magazine, and she just becomes weirdly obsessed with her coworker and starts messing with her. And Anya does some really messed up things throughout this book, but I was just like entertained the whole time. I don't know, I think I gave this like 3.5 stars, something like that. It's not a good book by any means, but yeah, I was just entertained because I truly never knew what Anya was gonna do next to mess with this person's life. But I can understand why it has such a low rating. Yeah, like I said, it's definitely not a great book. For number 2 on this list, we only have 2 books left to talk about. We have Headless by Aveda Weiss. This has an average rating of 3.20. This is a novella that is basically a poly romance involving the Headless Horseman. Oh, I gave this 3 stars. I just said, I guess I didn't really enjoy the writing style because it feels like you're reading like a movie montage. Like, you're quickly moving through just scenes of the story. I expected there to be more just like actual sex scenes, and it was more just, like I said, a montage where like I feel like you would see glimpses of a sex scene or something and then the story would move on or something. It was just like very weird. Apparently these characters are getting their own full-length novel at some point, which is very interesting. But yeah, like a lot of people that I follow gave this like 2 or 3 stars. Like it's not great. It's also very, very short. It's called an erotic short story. Oh yeah, it only has like 20 pages. This is just like not much of anything. I definitely understand why this has such a low average rating. So number 1 on this list, when I saw this book pop up as number 1, I can't tell you how long I laughed, because this is so funny to me that it has such a low average rating. I'm dying. This is a very short story. I think it's like 20 pages, called Seduced by the Pumpkin Spice Latte. Just take that title in for a second. This has an average rating of 3.0 exactly. Okay, how do I explain the story of this novella? Basically, we have our main character who is so obsessed with pumpkin spice lattes from Starbucks that she gets basically aroused by them. The story starts with like the first day of the pumpkin spice latte season at Starbucks. So she like goes like right when they open, she gets her pumpkin spice latte, she's having a good time. And there's 2 baristas working at the Starbucks, and they also are drinking pumpkin spice lattes, and they all get so turned on that they go upstairs and they have a threesome. And there you have it. I just explained the entire plot of this novella to you, so you don't even need to read it. I can't tell you guys how much I was laughing while reading this novella. I mean, I don't think the author is taking themselves seriously by writing this novella. I really do think it is meant to be, you know, laughed at and is satire. But I didn't even give this a rating because, like, what do you rate something like this? So yeah, this is just goofy and silly, and I mean, I will say at least it made me laugh. That is it for the worst books I have read according to Goodreads. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you guys had some laughs like I did. Definitely leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of these books or anything like that. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do. And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!